Happy Tuesday, everyone. We're really glad to have you here today for the second session of our Day One and Beyond series, which takes you through a series of topics and activities related to building out on Oracle Cloud. For those of you who might be new to these events, we are hosted on Cloud Customer Connect, which is our Oracle community forum for customers and end users. If you're not already a member, we invite you to create a free account, join in discussions, post questions, and look for upcoming events on various topics. My name is Renu Bhatt. I'm a TPM with the Customer Enablement team. And today I'm joined by Olivia Ferda and Joey Hall, both cloud engineers here at Oracle. Today, they're going to be focusing on business operations quick start on OCI. Before I hand it over to them, a quick reminder to use the Q&A box down there at the bottom of the screen for any questions throughout the session. Time permitting, we'll have a Q&A session at the end as well. And yes, this session is being recorded and we'll have the replay posted up on the community forum. Feel free to share the recording link with colleagues who couldn't make it today. With that, I'll hand it over to Olivia. Olivia, please take over.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session, which is the Business Operations Quick Start. So we'll be going over tools for organizing, tracking, and managing your resources in OCI from a cost perspective. So hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Ferda. I'm a cloud engineer on the customer enablement team. So I've been with Oracle for 2 years now, and I specialize in operations. I'm also here today with Joey and Larry, if you want to both go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Joey Hall, also a cloud engineer on the customer enablement team. I've been with Oracle for about a little over 3 years now, emphasizing a little bit in security, OCI as a whole, core infrastructure. And today I'm really excited to go through business operations with all of you. This is a really important topic to really understand as you get started within your Oracle Cloud tenancy and help you really monitor and manage all of the different resources that you'll be working with. So happy to help get everybody started and familiar with this section of OCI.
And I'm Larry Beausoleil. I'm here to kind of add and fill in as needed for any topic. So if there's any questions or anything like that, feel free to drop them in the Q&A and we'll get to those as we kind of progress through. I have a background in cloud infrastructure and have been doing this now for close to 14 years in the industry. So have very varying experience from going all the way back to running the cables for data centers. So thank you, Joey and Olivia, for putting this on and having me here to kind of talk through it with you all.
Thanks for providing the support, Larry. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Larry. So today we'll be covering some slides over topics like compartments to like quotas and Cloud Advisor, and then we'll also be jumping into the console to give some demos over tagging and cost analysis. And at the very end, we'll open it up for Q&A. But also please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A chat if you have any questions while we're presenting, and we'll get that answered, and we'll also leave some time at the end as well. So just a few goals for today's session is being able to describe the different topics that we cover, like compartments, tagging, and also know how to get started with them, and then also being able to differentiate between the different tools. So we're going over topics like quotas and service limits, as well as the difference between the two, being able to describe compartments and how you can use cost tracking budgets in your tenancy. So here is a shared responsibility slide. So on the left-hand side, you will see on-prem, where everything is on the customer responsibility. But as we go to the right, you'll see different layers from infrastructure as a service to software as a service, where the cloud service provider responsibility increases. So an example of this for IaaS would be a VM running in OCI, where we're actually managing the actual server and the virtualization. And then for PaaS, platform as a service, some examples of that would be Oracle Analytics Cloud and Oracle Integration Cloud. And then for software as a service, Some examples of that would be like a SaaS Fusion application, where mainly the customer is just managing user access and data. So essentially taking another layer and putting it on OCI as you go through from IS to SaaS.
And one thing to keep in mind here with business operations is depending on the type of service, as you can see in the categories here, you'll have to kind of think about some of the different administrative tools, some of the different services that we talk about today, right? So within IaaS, you might have to worry more about tagging and provisioning when you're provisioning your infrastructure, providing those tags, keeping track of those costs from like resource level versus, let's say, a software as a service. That level of granularity won't necessarily need to be involved at that point. So as you go through each of these services, right, depending on the level, there's going to be different levels of some of the topics of business administration that we'll go over today.
And here are a few services in OCI. So at the bottom, you'll see core infrastructure, and that is more infrastructure as a service, so compute, networking, storage. And then on top of that is more PaaS, platform as a service. So once again, OIC or Oracle Analytics Cloud and OIC or Oracle Integration Cloud. And then on top of that, you'll see more of our SaaS services as well. And on the left-hand side, you'll see some developer services available. So if you're interested in low-code development, we have Apex or infrastructure as a code using Resource Manager to provision your infrastructure in OCI. And then on the right hand of the slide, you will see cloud operations and security, as well as observability, so different tools for that. But we'll mainly be focusing on cloud operations right here, so going through all these different tools.
And there are a lot of services here that you can see on this slide. I mean, Olivia, how can you utilize some of these tools on the right to kind of help you make sense of and organize all of these services you have on the left when you deploy them in your environment?
Sure. So let's say that a company, they're just getting started in OCI. They're going to first need, compartments to be able to organize all these different resources. So organizing their compute instances or networking. So they're going to need compartments for organizing all of that. And then from there, they can use something like tagging to be able to track their resources. So once again, their instances or VCNs being able to track their resources. Once they've organized all that with compartments, and on top of that, they can leverage cost analysis from there to be able to check spending trends and being able to create reports. So seeing monthly costs for different compartments or seeing hourly costs for the different services. And so we'll be kind of covering these different tools in this presentation, seeing how you can organize your resources, track them, and also be able to manage them from a cost perspective.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's take this into an example. Let's say I work for a company, Vision Corp, and we recently did a lift and shift. So we migrated our legacy applications to OCI, and I'm trying to get an understanding of how I can kind of manage the resources that I provisioned, see what's going on, kind of manage costs, set up some tools that will help me really gain visibility into my environments within the cloud. So how can I use some of these tools that you just mentioned, some of those services from the previous slide to help me accomplish this goal?
Sure. So we'll be covering these 4 tools that will help with this initiative. So once again, you want to first organize your resources by, maybe have a compartment for networking or a compartment for your operations team. So you first want to organize, the structure of your account. And then once you've organized that, you're going to want to use tagging to be able to keep track of these resources. Also from a cost tracking perspective, tagging is very helpful. So we'll be diving a little bit more into that. And then now that you've organized your resources and use tagging to keep track of your resources, we'll go into budgets and quotas, how you can keep track of how much you're spending, and also being able to limit the number of resources that are being created. And then we'll also be going over Oracle Advisor, how you can implement best practices, and also, getting any recommendations or insight into your tenancy to be able to make them optimize spending in OCI. So when you're first starting out in OCI, you first start out with your root compartment and you have your groups of users, but from there, you're going to want to organize your compartments maybe by, like maybe you have a marketing group right here, maybe you have a finance group right here. And then from there, you may want to organize your compartments based off resource like enterprise data or enterprise applications. So you're going to really want to focus on the structure of your tenancy or how you're organizing your compartments. And then from there, you're going to want to go ahead and organize your resources based off your compartment. So once again, compartments are very foundational for working in OCI, because whenever, for instance, you're creating this autonomous database right here, you have to specify which compartment you're creating it in. And so you want to make sure that you're organizing your compartments, and then from there, you have your groups of users that can be granted access to these different compartments using policies. So it's very foundational for organizing your resources. And whenever you create, compute instance or autonomous database, you always have to specify which compartment that it is going to reside in.
And then I remember last week when we talked about in our last session, we talked about how you can use compartments for like access boundary for identity access management for security purposes. So let's say I have resources in different compartments. So here at Vision Corp, I have some different resources in infrastructure, but I might need to work with, let's say, some resources I have in the enterprise data compartment. And let's say I need to track the cost or usage of those at the same time. Is there a way I can do that outside of compartments? How would you suggest setting that up?
Yeah, so that actually brings us into tagging. So now that you've logically ordered your resources with compartments or organize them, you can use tags for tracking your resources. And then from a cost perspective, specifically, you can use cost tracking tags, which are going to be relevant for whenever you're setting your budgets. And so I'll actually be diving into that in the next few slides, but you can use tagging, if you have resources in different compartments, but you still want to keep track of those different resources, you can use tagging to do so.
And before we pop into the next one, we did have a question come up in the Q&A that this slide is really good to kind of cover. So VCN, can a VCN support multiple compartments? And yes, that you can do that. So in this particular diagram, we have resources that are kind of split out into the compartments. The main benefit or reason why we want compartments is logical isolation of our resources so that we can put policies around those. So the infrastructure one there, Olivia, if you want to circle the infrastructure one real quick. So you'll notice in this one here, this one has all of our VCNs, and then all of the resources in the other compartments are actually going to be in those specific VCNs. So you can have multiple VCNs and resources in separate compartments. So a lot of customers, when they build this out, you're going to have a compartment for marketing, finance, everything that we've kind of talked about here. And then we have those specific resources for those particular organizations or departments in the company. And the networking team has access to all of the core infrastructure. So we have infrastructure admins in this case, and we have policies associated around it. Now we're going to definitely dive deeper into like security and network constructs in later sessions. But this is something that when you look at this, you'll see all of your networking components that are maybe in one, because we want our network admins controlling all of those components. And then we can also add, as we kind of progress through this, add tagging accordingly as well. So back to you two.
Thanks, Larry. All right, so now that you've created your compartments and you've organized your resources, you're going to want to be able to track these resources. So tagging is important because it enables you to tag your resources with extra data so that you can describe how your different resources like compute or storage are used and what they're being used for. So with tags, you can associate individual resources with a project, a department, or even a customer. And then going back to from a cost perspective, you can use tags for cost tracking purposes and also being able to set budgets based upon cost tracking tags. So they're good for tracking your resources, but also, for cost tracking purposes as well. But just taking a step back and, a few things to consider just when working with tags is tags are metadata attached to resources. So they're used to add contextual information about a resource. So a resource like your load balancers or instances can have many tags. And so you'll see that there's two types of tags right here, freeform tags, and you'll see defined tags at the top. So this is more of managed resource metadata with defined tags. So a user would have to select a tag from a list or pre-populated value. whereas free form tags are more unmanaged metadata applied to resources by users. So your users can spin up a resource and you can go in and just tag it with anything you want. So that's kind of the main difference between the two, kind of that managed resource metadata versus that unmanaged metadata.
So I can see you have the two different types of tags here, and you explained some of the use cases for each of them. What one would you really recommend us using at Vision Corp when we get started?
So defined tags are going to provide you more features and control compared to freeform tags, which are going to have more limited functionality. So Oracle recommends that you only use freeform tags when you're first trying out the tagging feature in your system. So whenever you're just first getting started with tagging, because once again, you're going to have more functionality and control with defined tags. And you also see on the slide that you can only use cost tracking tags with defined tags. So that's one thing to keep in mind, just get more functionality with the defined tags. And then last thing on this slide is you have tag namespaces, and this allows you to group defined tags for access control. So you can think of the tag namespace as a container for a set of keys. And it's usually best practice to create at least 2 tag namespaces. So having one for everyone and then maybe one restricted for cost tracking. And then going into securing your tagging. So on this slide, you will see some policies for working with tagging. So you can allow your certain groups to be able to have certain permissions for working with your tags. So being able to inspect tag namespaces or being able to read tag namespaces or even manage. So you can grant these certain permissions for tagging right here. And you can even get as granular as allowing a certain group to use tag namespaces in a tenancy where that tag namespace is like development or something like that. So you can even get as granular as this where statement right here. So you can, write out certain policies to allow certain groups to be able to, inspect, read, or manage, or have certain permissions to work with tags.
Okay, so I would need a policy to then create those tags, create those tag namespaces, but I also would need the policies to allow certain groups to use those tags as well.
Right. In general, in OCI, you'll learn that's denied by default with anything, so access is not granted unless stated. So, an admin in your organization, first thing you set up groups, compartments, and policies to control, which users can access which services, which resources, and the type of access. And the same is going to be with tagging. And so one thing that you actually can do with tags and policies is have a tag admin creating and managing all the tags that your users apply to resources. So you can use policies to select tag admins who are able to create the tags. And then you can grant all others in the tenancy only the ability to apply tags. So the benefit of this approach is that you can create and manage the keys and values used to tag resources. Right. So going into tag application. So tag defaults let you specify tags that are applied automatically to all resources at the time of creation in a specific compartment. So it really just allows you to ensure that appropriate tags are applied at resource creation without requiring the user creating the resource to have access to your tag namespaces. And then just one thing to note when working with tag defaults is that previously existing resources in your compartment are not tagged retroactively. So it's best practice to create your tag default at the same time of creating your compartment, because let's say you create 5 resources and then create a tag default on that compartment, your previous 5 resources will not be tagged.
Got it.
So
Larry, go ahead.
Larry, in this case, so let's say I created those 5 resources and then I've gone ahead and set up a tag default. How can I automate the process of, tagging the previous 5? Is there a scripting or something that I can use if I've set up the tag default later to tag those resources?
Yeah, you definitely can. So it's something that there are definitely scripts out there. Since we have a tool called Functions, what you could do is create a script, put it in Functions, and have it go through and kind of scan the account and add accordingly. it's something that once you apply the automatic tagging, like you said, it's going to apply to the net new resources. So it's really something that, you know, as we kind of talk about this, you want to have that tagging namespace set up in advance, and apply it in advance before creating in that compartment. But yes, yeah, there's scripts that you can kind of go through, look at the resources for the account. And we definitely will talk about a little bit more of that in operations when we talk about automating some of this process. You can use tools like Terraform, and a lot of this script, you can pull in the resources, create a Terraform template, and then when you go to reapply that environment, you can actually add the tags into that template so it applies there. So there's a few ways to attack this if you've already deployed resources and you don't have cost tracking tags or automated tags inside of the account.
So it's best practice to create those tag defaults at the same time as you're creating compartments, but you still have option with Terraform or other scripting tools to be able to tag those other resources that were not tagged using the tag default.
So go ahead.
So going into some best practices for tags. So once again, going back to defined tags versus freeform tags, you want to use defined tags because you get more feature development, like those cost tracking tags with defined tags. You also want to create tag definitions for everything you want to search. So you generally just want to ask yourself what I need to search on and use that as a tag. Another thing, just going back to earlier, you want to use tag defaults, but you also want to create that at the same time as you're creating your compartment, because any resources created before that tag default will not be retroactively tagged. All right, so now that we've covered compartments and tags, I just want to kind of go through some of the differences between the two. So one way to look at compartments and tags is kind of like a filing cabinet. So a filing cabinet contains all of your files, like a compartment contains your resources, and you can have different filing cabinets, you know, for like math, science, and history. Like you can have different compartments for different teams, like operations or developers. And then within these filing cabinets, you can have folders to track and organize your files, much like tags track your resources in OCI. And overall, compartments are more for setting permission boundaries, while tags are more for things like tracking costs. But I kind of like to think of compartments and tags like a filing cabinet system.
So if we wanted to use both of these together, like you kind of talked about earlier, we would have those compartments set up, and those would be good for our access boundaries from a security standpoint. And we could also view usage and cost in that dimension. But then by using tags, we have other dimensions that we can do things like more detailed cost tracking, or we could apply automation based off of tags just across compartments as well, correct?
Correct. And you can also use tags to track, you know, resources in different compartments. So, you know, once again, compartments are good for, you know, organizing your resources, and tags, you can use that for tracking. But yeah, just kind of like a filing cabinet system where different filing cabinets and you have all your files in there, but you can use folders to kind of organize your different resources. So kind of like to think of it as a filing cabinet system, but yeah.
Perfect. Let's hop into my Vision Corp tenancy and see if I can apply some of these different services and tools that you just walked us through, Olivia. So let's hop into the console. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Perfect. So this is our tenancy. This is our tenancy homepage. You can see some information about the different services that I've recently visited, some pinned ones as well. Based off of my role here at Vision Corp, I have some recommended services that I can use as well. A couple different quick starts that we can walk through to help provision resources or help us learn more. So to get a better understanding of kind of what's happening within our tenancy, I'm going to go up into this menu in the top left, and it's going to have all the different categories for the different resources that I can provision within OCI and different services that I can work with. So I think I'm going to hop into governance administration, and we'll look at tenancy management real quick. And we'll look at the tenancy explorer. So you talked about compartments today, Olivia, and we could see within the Tenancy Explorer, I can view resources based off of different compartments that I have provisioned things in. So if I go into my Vision Corp compartment, I should be able to see all of the different types of services that I have deployed within this compartment. They're all grouped within that logical boundary that you just talked about. So I have different buckets, compartments, even policies, and some of those tag defaults and tag namespaces that we set up. You can view all of those within here. And then you can also, I believe, filter by tag as well. So we talked about tagging and being able to look at things across different dimensions. If we go into these tag namespaces, like she mentioned, those are going to be the groupings of tags. So I have a tag namespace for Vision Corp, and there's going to be a couple different tag keys we have stored in there. So if I went by name, I should be able to apply that filter, and then I can see resources with that Vision Corp name tag within here, and you can see the compartment that that's stored in. And then speaking of tags, let's go into tag namespaces and show kind of how we have an example of this within our tenancy here. So for tag namespaces, you can see we have the Vision Corp tag namespace for the tags that we just showed in that previous section. But if I want to go in and create a new tag namespace, I'll have the compartment that I would like this namespace to be stored in. I can give it a definition, a description, and then the namespace that I would like this stored in as well. So, right, so this is going to be the namespace. I could also apply tags to the tag namespace. Let's say it's a type of tag namespace. I could even tag my tags if needed. And then if we go into a tag namespace, so we see different tag definitions here. So if I want to go in and create a tag definition, right? So right here we have name, owner, type. You could do other various areas if you want to filter based off of that or apply tags or metadata based off of that. I have the option of making this a cost tracking tag. So we're going to get into cost tracking in the next portion of this as well. So then we can apply this as a cost tracking tag to be used for cost analysis and tracking cost and budgets and stuff like that. And then based off of the tag key that I set up, I can also have a static value that the user enters, or I could provide that user with a list of values. So they will be able to select from that list instead of applying just the user entered string. So it can kind of provide a boundary there for people on our teams to select values that we want them to select when creating that key definition. And then if you need to go in and edit, you can edit the definition whenever you want there. And we also mentioned another type of tags called tag defaults. So tag defaults, you're not going to find them within here. We're going to go into our compartments. So we mentioned compartments, good for that access boundary, that logical grouping for security purposes, as well as monitoring usage and some other tactics. And within identity and security, we can find compartments right here. And let's go into our Vision Corp compartment again. So we're within our company's use case, and you can see that we have a couple compartments as you saw in that architecture diagram, or that compartment structure diagram that we talked about earlier in the slide deck. And you can see broken out into different teams. But if I want to view the tag defaults for this compartment, as well as any of these child compartments, I can go into tag defaults and create one here. So this is going to be that automated tag that whenever you are provisioning resources within that compartment, they will get this tag applied to it. So I could go in and select that tag namespace that we've made, select the tag key. So if I wanted to tag it with a name, I think we have a default for that already. I could do the owner of the tag, and then that could have a default value that automatically applies it, or I could make a user applied value. So that user has to apply a value with this tag before that resource is created. And then you can create that resource with that tag of whoever the owner was there. So you can ensure that that tag is going to be applied to resources within this compartment. You can do this across a bunch of your different compartments.
And once again, it's best practice to create this tag default at the same time as you're creating your compartment. because, once again, if you create some resources and then create that tag default, those resources previously created won't be retroactively tagged. But as Larry mentioned, you can use Terraform to kind of automate or use scripting to retroactively tag some of those resources.
Right. So if you get started within your tenancy, best practice for both, make sure you have the compartment structure that you like, the policies in place for the access, the role, right, users and groups created, as well as these tag namespaces and tag defaults. If you take the time to do that beforehand, there's going to be less work that you have to do afterwards. So taking the time at the beginning will be preferable. And then just to show you, we showed you like creating tags, how you can apply tag defaults. Let's just go in and let's say provision something to show you where you can apply tags. So let's do a simple use case. Let's create an object storage bucket. So let's say I'm in the information services team. Let's just do it in, say, enterprise data. Let's say I want to create a bucket. We don't really have to worry about these at the moment. I'm just going to show you where you apply tags and how that looks within your resource provisioning process. So here we just have an object storage bucket with all of the information required for that. And then you can see at the bottom here, you'll have this with whenever you're provisioning a resource, you'll have the ability to select your tag namespace. Vision Corp is the one that we've created. We could have name, and then I could apply a tag value here and then create that as needed. I could do that across the different ones as well. So type, see the type, you're going to have a pre-populated area here. So if I want dev, test, or prod, I could say, well, this object storage bucket is going to be used for production. So I could have that prod tag value that's part of this tag namespace, and that will be applied to this resource once I create it. So that's just a quick example of how we would use some of the concepts that Olivia just went over. And with that, Olivia, I will hand it back to you and we can go over some of the cost pieces.
Thanks, Joey. All right, so in this next portion, we'll be diving a little bit more into budget, quotas, as well as Oracle Advisor. So looking more on how you can track your spend, how you can limit the number of resources that are being created, as well as getting any recommendations or insight into how you can optimize spend in OCI. All right, so diving into budgets allows you to track, spend per project, cost center, even business unit. And so you'll see a little bit more of this in the demo, but you'll see budget scope right here that there's two different scopes that you can choose when creating your budget. So you'll see that there is compartment and cost tracking tag. And so maybe you might choose a budget for compartment because you want to maybe see how much the networking team is spending or the operations team is spending. Maybe you want different budgets for different teams. So maybe you might choose compartment. Another budget scope that you can choose is cost tracking tag. So maybe, once again, you're tracking like a project, you have resources in different compartments and you want to set a budget for a certain project. Maybe you might choose a cost tracking tag for that. So there's two different budget scopes that you can choose from. And then on the screen, you'll see that you can set the budget amount. So in this case, for this compartment, maybe you want the budget amount to be $1,000. And then you can see how much is spent, as well as the percent spent and the forecast. So you can get that information with budgets. And then you can get notified maybe if a budget is at risk of being exceeded. And then you can get, alerted via email, but you can also have budgets notify PagerDuty or Slack via Oracle notification service. And there's also enforced budgets, and that automatically prevents new resources from being created if a budget is maybe forecasted to be exceeded. So that's essentially budgets. Once again, we'll kind of dive into the console and show you a little bit more about how to get started, but you can choose these two different scopes on compartment or a cost tracking tag.
So if I went into the console now, could I just go and start creating some of these budgets, or are there certain permissions that need to be granted to me or whoever else will be working with budgets and cost within our tenancy?
Right, so in order to be able to create budgets, that user must be part of a group that's added in identity access management to a usage budget policy to be able to create budgets. So once again, in OCI, it's going to be denied by default. They must be granted access to be able to work with budgets.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, and here are different filters and tags that you can filter upon, like including availability domain, time, granularity, or just different dimensions like compartment, region, and availability domain. And then just focusing on tags right here. So tags work well with compartment structure, being able to track your resources there and across different compartments as well. So good for tracking, once again, your resources across different compartments.
And then some resources, I know what if they're like free resources and I want to get an idea for how often they're getting used, but I can't necessarily see it through cost. Is there a way I can do that as well within the tenants, within the console?
Sure. So actually there's this page in the console, it's called limits, quotas, and usage. And so it lets you know how much of a certain resource is being utilized, as well as what the service limit for that is. And that kind of brings us into the next section. How am I, managing the number of resources that can be, created, but also like how much is being used of that resource. So quotas is good for that because it sets limits on how many resources can be created in your different compartments. And that will also impact all child compartments as well. And so it's good if maybe you want to prevent a certain number of maybe expensive resources from being created in certain compartments, or prevent maybe, exadata systems from being created in non-production environments. So it's good for doing that. Just limiting the number of resources that are created in each compartment. Maybe for networking, your networking department, maybe you don't want more than 30 VCNs being created. You can go ahead and do that with a quota policy.
And then this is quotas you are setting up yourself within your environment, right? Are there other ways that I can limit how my resources are provisioned, or is it mainly going to be through quotas?
So quotas are set by your admins on your compartments. There's also service limits in Oracle. So compartment quotas are pretty similar to service limits, but the biggest difference is that service limits are set by Oracle and compartment quotas are set by admins, but you can always request a service limit increase if needed. But let's say, you may have a service limit of 50 VCNs, but your admins can get more granular and set a limit on the number of VCNs that can be created for your different compartments, or a tendency to say 30 VCNs. And it's best practice to use service limits for your tenancy and quotas for your compartments. And here are just some quota examples right here. So you'll see this policy statement right here. Circle this one. So if you want to, only allow a certain number of compute instances in a compartment to be created, you can go ahead and do so. And you can even get more granular in saying where. So you can specify, the region. So that's an example of using a quota policy, limiting maybe the number of compute instances in that compartment from being created. And you can even clear quotas by using an unset statement, which is going to remove the quota for all resources. So you'll see an example right here as well. And then once again, you'll see best practice. Once again, you want to use tenancy control with service limits and compartments with quotas. And so here's just kind of a recap of everything we covered so far. So first off, you want to go ahead and organize your resources into compartments, maybe by project, and then also tag them by cost center. And then you want to be able to create budgets for either your compartments, but we also saw that you can create budgets for your cost tracking tags. So once again, maybe you want to set a budget for your different compartments. So like networking or operations, you can go ahead and do so, or you can do that for cost tracking tags. So let's say you're tracking a project as different resources in different compartments. You can go ahead and also set a budget for your cost tracking tags. And this is actually what we'll be diving into in a moment, but you can break down costs using cost analysis. So getting a little bit more insight into your spend. And also you can use quotas, to limit maybe expensive resources. So you can do that as well, but you also have service limits set by Oracle, but you can always request an increase if needed.
And could I use quotas and service limits at the same time, or is it like one or the other?
You can use them at the same time. So once again, Oracle may say, hey, like your service limit and your tenancy is 50 VCNs, but maybe your admins like, hey, I want to limit that to, 30 VCN so they can manage that through their different compartments, and also kind of, mainly set limits on those different compartments, saying, hey, like, this compartment, I only want them to create this number of VCNs, and then this other compartment, this number of VCNs. So it kind of allows for that granularity with the quotas. All right, and then going into the last topic before Joey jumps into the console is Oracle Advisor. All right, so Advisor is a recommendation engine that kind of helps you implement best practices and also being able to optimize spending in OCI. So it finds any potential inefficiencies in your tenancy and also offers guided solutions that explain how to address them. And these recommendations, the main goal is just to help you maximize cost savings and also improve the security of your tenancy. So that's Cloud Advisor, but we also have the built-in Cloud Guard, which is more focused on security. So it has recommendations to help you see and address security vulnerabilities. So Joey, if I want to use like a tool like Cloud Guard, is that already set up in my tenancy, or do I have to do something to maybe enable that?
So within your tenancy, you'll have to go in and say there's a button that says Enable Cloud Guard, and you'll click Enable Cloud Guard, and it'll have a set of policies listed out for you that you'll just have to just review them and click Apply. And then you'll get to select kind of how you want to configure Cloud Guard within your tenancy, but it is available for you. You just have to enable it.
Okay, awesome. So all I need to do is enable it, and I'll start getting some recommendations after it collects data. All right, so going into how, Advisor helps you optimize cost. So Advisor already has kind of a set of cost saving recommendations, like maybe downsizing underutilized VMs or deleting any unused storage. And each recommendation is specific to a resource and kind of includes a fix-it flow in the console. And it's also customizable because each of your workloads is going to have a unique performance characteristic. So for each recommendation, you can pick a recommendation profile like aggressive, balanced, conservative, and profiles can be targeted at specific workloads using tags. And lastly, each of these recommendations includes an estimated cost saving to kind of help focus on recommendations that will have the highest impact on your cost. So just really emphasizing, anything that maybe is underutilized, like those VMs, or deleting kind of any unused storage. So kind of bringing insight to that and helping you with recommendations.
And if I go in and look at Cloud Advisor now, are there going to be recommendations already set, or can I customize some of them, or is it just based off of kind of like Oracle best practices for some of these things?
So once again, like each of your workloads is going to have unique performance characteristics. So Cloud Advisor is going to be customizable. So you would have to pick a recommendation profile depending on your workloads. This can be aggressive, balanced, or conservative, and they can be, targeted at those different specific workloads.
Got it. Thank you.
Right, and then here's just an overview of Vision Corp's structure. Once again, so we've covered tagging for keeping track of your different resources in these different compartments, and you can use cost tracking tags to help you with your budget. And then we've also covered, policies a little bit, when you're working with your different compartments to allow certain groups to have access to perform certain actions in OCI. So as you've learned today, it's usually denied by default in OCI. So certain permissions to like work with budgets or tagging must be first granted to be able to do so. And with that, I'll pass it over to Joey to take us into the console.
Thank you, Olivia. Now let's take some of those concepts again that you just went over and show how we can apply them within our Vision Corp environment. So the first thing we went over there was budgets. So if I want to see what usage and cost kind of looks like within my tenancy, I want to limit some of that spend or be notified if spend is getting to a certain threshold. I can go into cost management here, and we can go into budgets to start off. So you can see budgets. We have a couple budgets already set up within here, but if you would like to create a budget, Let's say we want a new budget for our team. We can do the budget based off of compartment. So we talked about that. That would be a budget for all of the resources within the compartment that we specify, or we could do it by cost tracking tag. So we talked about those defined tags that we set up previously, and you had the ability to check whether or not that is a cost tracking tag. So I could set a budget based off of that cost tracking tag within here as well. And then you can also add tags for that here. Here are some details when you are creating your budget. So you could select the day of the month to begin processing. So not everybody's budget always starts at the first of the month. You could select, maybe it's on the 15th, whatever that work looks like within your company. You could select the budget amount, so whatever amount that you would like here. And then you could do this based off of the actual spend. So once the actual spend hits a certain amount, or you could do it off of forecasted spend. So if it's forecasted to hit a certain amount within that budget processing period. So if I wanted to do a percentage of the budget, I could do like 80% of what we'd specified for some reason, or I could do an absolute amount here. So if I think it's forecasted to 7,000 or something like that, you can do it within here. And then you also can alert people based off of that budget. So if I want someone within my company, maybe I'm responsible for monitoring and managing cost within my tenancy, right? I could have my email here with a message letting me know what is happening with the budget for what I've specified. And remember, you can have budgets across different cost tracking tags. Maybe I have a different tag per cost center. Maybe I want to do it off of certain projects. I want to know how the budget is looking for my development environment, for my test environment within a particular team, right? I can set budgets up in either dimension as I choose.
And you can also have budgets send email alerts, but you can also have budgets notify, once again, PagerDuty or Slack using the notification service.
Right. So it can integrate with those other services, and you can do more than just send out emails if you would like to set that up. Thank you, Olivia. And then just to show you, we already have a budget created here. So again, we have that amount. We have a $5,000 budget for Vision Corp per monthly basis. And this is our spending period that we have here. And we're utilizing a cost tracking tag for this one. And then you can see the alert rule. We have, if the actual spend hits 80%, I would like to be notified. And then I could come into the tenancy and do whatever action necessary or communicate with the appropriate groups and see what we can do from a cost standpoint to make sure that we fall within our actual budget for the month. And in order to do this a little further, so we have a budget set up, but let's say, okay, this is my overall spend for this particular cost tracking tag or for this particular project. But what if I want to actually see the details within that? Let's say I want to go in and utilize cost analysis. Now, we talked about permissions a little bit here, and this is where we kind of get stuck when demoing this, is I do not have the permissions to actually view the details of our cost analysis. But if you do have that, you will see a couple different metrics for both cost and usage within your tenancy. So you'll be able to see different types of reports here at the top. So if I wanted to see cost by service to see which services are attributing to the cost within that compartment that we have the budget set up for, monthly costs, I could do it by service and tag. So a couple different dimensions as well, or compartment. If that budget's on a particular compartment, right, I can look at it from that standpoint. So it's compute costs by compartment. And then I could do the time period. I could adjust the granularity, and again, cost or usage, depending on what you're trying to look at. Some of those free services, right, you may want to just look at usage as well if cost isn't associated with it. And you also have the ability to show the forecast here as well. So again, that would help you with getting more details on each of these, and you'll get charts, and it'll break it down by the different services or whatever filters that you have chosen to apply. And you also can download some of these reports as well. So you'll get different CSV downloads if you would like to utilize those. There's some other tools that you can actually import these CSVs into to do further analytics if that's what you would like to do.
Hey, Joey, can you pop back over to the budgets? There was a question, and I don't remember this off the top of my head. Can you go create a budget? I think we can only do monthly. Yeah. So it is monthly for the budget. So the question was, can we set budget instead of can we set an annual budget instead of a monthly budget. And at this point, we can set monthly budgets. So it would be definitely something that I would submit to support, or we can also submit that over for a feature request. But at this point, it's monthly. And then from the we'll get into a couple other questions, but just wanted to answer that real quick. So back to you, Joey.
There was one more related question on, can you have more than one cost tracking tag attached?
Yeah, click on the cost tracking tags there, Joey. For this particular thing, for the budget portion, this is going to show that the specific one, it doesn't, to my knowledge, have an option to add multiple for that particular budget.
I think you're
But
just doing multiple budget rules for each, or you're trying to do two at the same time.
Yeah, if you're trying to attach to cost tracking tags, you'd be able to do that. But this would be something that when you create the tagging namespace, that you'd have multiple key value pairs that you can associate for those resources.
This would be multiple tags per resource, but one tag per budget.
Right.
All right. And then we can hop back into these in a second. I'm going to go over two more things quickly. I know we're coming a little bit short on time here, but let's hop into limits and quotas real quick. So we talked about, there are a couple questions on this as well, right? You're going to see your service limits here for each of the resources. They're going to be specified in this column. You can request a service limit increase for these. And then you can also utilize some of these to set quotas as well. So you're going to have a quota policy stub. You could copy this and then utilize this within your quota section as well. So again, these service limits set by Oracle, but you can request increases based off of your needs. And you can look at,
Joey, where would I request that increase for the service limit?
I believe you would request a service limit increase here. And I think you can also do it from.
Yeah, so there's many different places where you can request a service limit increase if you need one.
Yeah, so also in the help section here, you could contact Oracle support, chat with everybody, create a support request as mentioned, and then you can do a limit request here or from this area within the console. And then you can do limits based off of a bunch of different types of services here as well, scope, and choose the compartment if you want to view that more granularly. And if we go into quota policies, we have a quota policy set here, but if I wanted to create a quota, but I could even use that quota policy I just grabbed from the service limit, and I could just change the number and then change the compartment. So I could limit that resources based off that. And I could also tag my policy, right? So if I want to have certain tags apply to certain groupings of quota policies, I could use tags within here as well. So tags can be used all over the place, are very useful. And if you have that created quota policy, that will be in here. And then the last piece, we want to touch on some questions, just briefly show Cloud Advisor. Cloud Advisor will also be within governance and administration. And similarly to cost analysis, I also do not have the permissions to view. Oh, no, I have for some, just not for the cost management portion. But you could see Cost Advisor spans more than just cost management. It can help you with high availability, security. Again, this is going to be done through CloudGuard, and we do have CloudGuard enabled within our tenancy now. I put a little link to the to a little lab to help you enable that, and security will go over that in more detail. But here you can view recommendations across these categories. If I go into cost, let's go recommendations, and I want to look at one of those categories, I can go to cost management, right? I can give you some recommendations for helping with cost management within here. If I wanted to go in to one of these, like delete unattached boot volumes, right? I could see details on those instances, and I could click on these and go and take action upon them. This is the description of what this recommended action would be. And then I could go in and apply any of these. So you could implement selected recommendations. You could dismiss some. If I want to go into one, I could go into that resource and then take action from there. So there's a lot you can do within Cloud Advisor. Again, it spans several different areas to help you just improve these different categories, make these different areas more efficient within your tenancy, and just kind of help guide you in that direction. So we're kind of showing you some examples of those topics that we went over today. Again, this is to help you get started within the realm of business operations and give you visibility into your tenancy and kind of control and manage the different resources that you're going to be working with. So hopefully that helped you there. Let's see if we have a couple minutes left. If we want to tackle some of these questions now, we'll do a follow-up as well. We'll send this out with the questions that weren't able to be answered live on the call. So let's see, Larry, Olivia, any of them that popped up to you that we could talk about real quick?
There's
Yeah,
one question.
Oh, go ahead, Olivia. It was the question on CloudGuard that you were going to bring up.
Yeah, so it says, is CloudGuard an included service with an IaaS, or is it an extra cost if enabled?
CloudGuard is a free service. But if you do integrate with other things that may have a cost associated with that, that would just be the cost of that service if there is one with the integrated portion. But CloudGuard itself is a free service to help you gain insights into tenancy. Let's see, any others we like here?
Yeah, and to help with that question, I'm going to drop this, Joey, if you want to open up this link. It's the security pricing page. I'll also drop this in that answer.
We'll also be going a little bit more over CloudGuard in the security session. So if you want to learn a little bit more about CloudGuard, we will be covering it then.
And I'll give a full run through on that one. But the CloudGuard's already set up within our tenancy. That lab that I posted in one of the answers, that's a quick intro to enabling CloudGuard. It's through our Live Labs platform, if you're not familiar with that. But here, this is the cloud security pricing page that Larry just, I think, popped in the chat as well. So you could see all of the different costs associated with different services. So you could see here, CloudGuard, free. And lots of these other services within core security are going to be free. You just have to go in, enable them, set them up, see if it makes sense for your architecture. If you want to utilize it, you can work with people on your team to help through there. And we're happy to provide any documentation or answer questions on our security quick start for those.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Olivia, Joey, and Larry. Really appreciate your time and help with the session. And a big thank you to everyone for joining us today. Our next session will be after 3 weeks on October 25. We are not doing after 2 weeks because we have Cloud World happening at that time. So on October 25, same time, we'll focus on networking quick start. I already shared a link to the page where you can find the registration links for the upcoming sessions. So feel free to go in there, look at the upcoming sessions, and you'll find a link there for the previous recordings as well. So thank you again for your time today. We'll see you all next time. Have a great day, everyone.